right, folks, Roland Martin here. Today is Monday, April 29, 2019. I'm broadcasting live from the International Civil Rights Museum here in Greensboro, North Carolina, where we, of course, will be live streaming our event in an hour in partnership with the American Heart Association. But first, we'll deal with our breaking news story. That is the death of John Singleton, the director of Boys in the Hood, Baby Boy, of course, Four Brothers, so many other different films. He passed away today after his family took him off life support in Los Angeles. He checked himself into the hospital a couple of weeks ago, complaining of problems in his leg after returning from a trip. And then, of course, initially they said it was a mild stroke, but now we know that it was a severe stroke he suffered. And the decision was made by his family to remove him from life support. He passes away at the age of 51. The outpouring of love and affection for John Singleton has been enormous. Many of the folks who work with him on screen and off screen have been talking about his life, his impact, and what he meant to the film profession. Remember, he was just 24 years old when he was nominated for the first African-American for Best Director for Boys in the Hood. In fact, Spike Lee posted on Instagram that the moment John Singleton came up to him and said, "I'm going to be a filmmaker," he said he knew in his spirit that he was actually going to do exactly what he was destined to do. He went on, of course, to direct a number of films. In addition, executive produced movies. He also had a show on the FX network that he had been working on the last 2 years. And so John Singleton, a major force in the film industry. And so, in fact, folks, here's just some of the comments that we have been looking at. Folks have been talking about his films. And again, those films include Poetic Justice, Higher Learning, Rosewood, Shaft, as I said, Baby Boy, Too Fast, Too Furious, Four Brothers, Hustle and Flow, which of course led to Academy Award nominations for Terrence Howard as well as Taraji P. Henson. And for just a tour de force, again, here are a sampling of some of those tweets. Peter Ramsey, John, you were a kind and supportive friend, a loving father, a passionate and committed artist. You truly lived your life to the fullest. You didn't just make your dreams come true, but those of so many other people. So Godspeed with all love and gratitude. Keisha Sharp, who stars in a show on Fox, she said, "I hold John Singleton in my thoughts and prayers. I pray for his family and friends for their recovery at this time as their loving father, brother, son flies to a better place. I love working with this warm and talented man. We will meet again." And again, folks, just all kind of folks. This is what Taraji P. Henson, what she posted on Instagram. And this actually took place on Saturday. visited you today. Me and Tyrese prayed so hard over you. You heard my voice and jumped up. I have hope and faith because I know that hashtag God is. Keep praying, everybody, for our beloved John Singleton. Again, that was what she posted on Saturday. Tyrese also made a lengthy post on his Instagram TV account. You really should go look at that. And he talked about that he was supposed to fly to London. And he said, but something in his spirit said that he needed to go see John Singleton that day because if he returned from his trip, John, he would not be able to see him. And so he said he turned to his wife and she says, baby, you need to go do it. And so he then went to the hospital and where he met up with Taraji Henson. He says in his post, there were a number of other people who were in the hospital, who were crying, who were laughing, telling stories about working with John Singleton. And he said, quote, and he typed this on his note section on his iPhone, on this flight back to London, and I just can't sleep. My heart is heavy. There's a feeling in my chest that just won't go away. 27 years, my brother, our brother and family. In about an hour, I'm about to tell you guys for the first time ever how the movie Baby Boy happened. If anybody is down for a good detailed story, stick around. Praying hard for you, John. You're not just love. You're beloved, and all of this hurts. Again, if you go to Tyrese's Instagram account or his IGTV feed, you'll actually see this lengthy post set to music where you can actually hear what he had to say describing the relationship, how John Singleton came to his home and told him that he needed to be in Baby Boy, made him read the script cover to cover, sitting at his table. And so it is an amazing, amazing story. I had the opportunity to meet John Singleton on many occasions, interviewed him at the American Black Film Festival in 2017, not only for my then TV One show News One Now, but also on stage, the closing session there. They always do a major Q&A with the director, and I was chosen by Jeff and Nicole Friday to do the interview with John Singleton, and so we're going to have some of that a little bit later for you. But right now, we want to turn to some folks who knew him well. First off is Mario Van Peebles, longtime director and producer. Mario, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Brother, thanks for having me on. I remember when I first met John, I was at Warner Brothers, and I had my first feature called New Jack City that I'd just gotten the deal to direct. And I came out of the office, and there was a young brother there. He had on a school jacket, I'll never forget. And he introduced himself. He said, my name is John Singleton. I said, my brother, I'm Mario Van Peebles. And we started talking. And he said, I've got this script, Boys in the Hood. And I said, I just got this script, New Jack City. And it was a new time for us as filmmakers, and we both got out there, and New Jack came out, and we did our thing, and then Boys in the Hood came out, and I got to know him over the years as a man, as a filmmaker, but also as a father. Both John and I love being dads, and we would get together and talk as much about being fathers, because that was one of the best roles I ever got to play, was being a father. And we talk about being fathers, being loving Black fathers, and the different kind of souls that your kids come in with, and how to raise them, and how to read to them, and how to talk to them. So we talked about as much as filmmaking. We talked about sailing. We talked about fatherhood. We talked about it all.
Mario, you mentioned New Jack City. And the reality is one of your producers of that film, we lost him at the age of 42 to a stroke, George Jackson. John Singleton, 51 years old. And so as somebody who is very health conscious like yourself, very much about the environment as well, it must be difficult. I made a post earlier. Luther Vandross was 54 years old. Barry White was 58 years old. And I mentioned George as well, losing just the immensely talented individuals at such young ages.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we understand is that, as we grow older, as we grow, it's got a lot to do with our genetics, but it also has a lot to do with our habits and how we handle stress in particular. And I think sometimes, especially for Black folks, some people would say, well, we still suffer from post-slavery, post-Jim Crow syndrome. We suffer things that are not always tangible that folks can see. And John went through a lot, as I know I did, and of course our parents did. So when you are in a business where you are not going to be judged by your peers, you don't control the outcome. When you're you're doing something like what we're doing, where you're not just acting, but you're directing and writing, and and you're trying to get the financing. There's so many elements that I think can be stressful, that I think a lot of how we age is how we process stress. You know, you got to make an effort to dance.
And in fact, Mario, I want to reference an Instagram post that John put up on January 15th. And this was when everybody was doing all those 10-year challenges, 2008, 2018.
Right.
And there was a photo of him in 2008, very serious. There's a photo of him in 2018 on a boat, smiling. And he said this here. He said, 2008, I was too serious. 10 years later, 2018, I'm all about living my best good life, no stress.
Yes.
That speaks to what you were just saying.
Yeah. So I saw him. That's interesting, because towards the last couple of times I saw him, he was starting to say, I've got to find time for me, you know, to live my best life, and to find time to look back and process all of this and say, man, my dad always said it too. My dad said, we tend to focus so much on the future. Every now and then you got to stop and really enjoy today. Having said that, I don't know the details of his situation, but a lot of us,
of course,
grow up in places with food deserts. There's not a lot of health food. There's not a lot of fresh food. We kill ourselves with our knives and our forks. And I'm not speaking to John, but a lot of us as a people don't understand how, you know, we're not only getting substandard housing, sometimes we're getting substandard diets and substandard living conditions. So we really have to make an effort to love and laugh and take care of ourselves, Roland. Now, having said that, I'm definitely not perfect, brother. I'm a vegan between meals. So, but when it comes to time to eat,
I understand,
man. But I definitely make an effort, you know. And here's the thing. The other thing I'll just say about John is this: the brother got so much done. Look at that list you just read to us. You know, it's a tragedy to pass early, but it's definitely a tragedy to not come here to be incarnate in this body to do some of what you came to do. And I know Brother John did a lot of what he came to do. Not all of it. You know, we lost him way too early. But I'm going to tell you, this brother got a lot done. He made a difference.
Absolutely. Mario Van Peebles, we certainly appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, folks, right now I want to turn to another director, someone who knew John Singleton well, Bill Duke. Bill Duke, how you doing?
You know, still grieving over
Bill
this,
there?
but glad to be here today. Can you hear me?
Bill, I can hear you. First and foremost, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear you.
All right. Bill, first and foremost, just your thoughts on the passing of John Singleton.
I'm speechless. You know, I think we all love John. And at 51, it's just shocking. He was a pioneer, you know, like Michael Schultz and Spike and Robert Townsend and the Hughes brothers and many others who gave a voice to the voiceless, you know. His first films, you know, the media always made the kids in the inner city look like these sociopathic monsters, and he gave them their voice of humanity. Does that make any sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I think when you talk about him also being a student of film, I mean, he was always a very serious person. I read from what Spike Lee's post on Instagram when he said the moment he met him, he said, I am going to be a filmmaker, he said, a lot of people walk up to me and they say that. He said, but I could look in his eye, the intensity in his eye, knew exactly that he was going to do what he said he was going to do.
Yes. And he was a great human being, too, you know. He was a great person. He was not egocentric. No matter how much he accomplished, he was a hungry human being. He wanted to do better and more all the time. And he didn't just do, you know, stuff that was surface. You know, John always wanted to do something that had meaning. I call his films edutainment. They're entertaining, but they give you something to think about and feel. And you leave with a sense of his understanding of our mutual humanity. So we're going to miss him, you know.
Bill Duke, I certainly appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much for joining us. Talk about. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
God bless you. Thank you.
All right. One of the very young filmmaker made a movie called Straight Outta Brooklyn called Mattie Rich. Mattie has been on the West Coast for some time. He joins us right now. Mattie, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Roland. It's good to speak with you. You know, feeling really bad about the loss of our brother, John Singleton, who's always been a role model for me to look up to. And we met in 1991. New York Times did the iconic cover with black directors, and John was there, and myself, Bill Duke, Mara Van Peebles, Spike, and the Hudlin brothers. And I gravitated towards John from, you know, learning about Boys in the Hood and him learning about my first film, Straight Outta Brooklyn. And he was from South LA. I was from Red Hook Projects in Brooklyn. And I just connected with him on so many different levels. Even when I moved from Brooklyn to Hollywood and I had a deal at Sony Studios, he was already on the lot with a deal, and he would sit me down, you know, over lunch and teach me the game of producing and directing commercial films. There's just not enough that I can say about this man. You know, I've seen him so many times at the Directors Guild annual dinner not too long ago this year, and he's always been encouraging to me, and that's just a testament of the man. Outside of being an iconic filmmaker, making classic movies, but also being an advocate, Roland, for us in front of the camera, in behind the camera, as we can see on television with his series and in his films. So he will always be missed.
Wait.
Absolutely.
Well, I think if you look at, again, some of the tributes pouring in, folks talked about, again, his impact, not only for the people who he put in the films, but just like what Spike Lee did, the people who he put behind the camera, the folks who went on to work on other television shows, other movies, people who are writers, who work on the technical side. I mean, that's also something that's critically important to understand.
It is, because he didn't have to do that. And this was a testament of who John Singleton when I say an advocate, and he was an advocate, and I know many people who he worked with behind the scenes where he advocated for us to be a part of these major feature films, you know, crew members and, you know, talent in front of the camera. I can just tell you from just the advice that he's given me before I directed the Inkwell on just the studio system. You know, I was coming from making an independent film to learning what it is to deal with, you know, the corporate structure of Hollywood. And he knew that very well. So that's who he was. He wasn't an egocentric kind of a person. He was a very humble man, but had vision. He had strong vision. And he told our stories, the stories that matter to those living in South LA or those, you know, living anywhere. The stories that studios would probably didn't even think that economically would make money. And then he showed us and showed them that our stories do make money.
Well, Mattie Rich, we certainly appreciate you joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered, sharing your thoughts about John Singleton, the passing of John. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Folks, as I said earlier, I talked about several prominent African Americans who have passed away as a result of stroke. John Singleton, 51. You heard me talk with Mario Van Peebles about film director and producer George Jackson at 42. Luther Vandross passed away from complications from his stroke at 54. Of course, also Barry White, 58 years old. But how are African Americans more impacted by strokes than anyone else? Joining us right now is Dr. James Allred, cardiologist with the Cone Health Medical Group. And, of course, we're here in Greensboro for this American Heart Association event. And we're supposed to be talking about, of course, his HBCU initiative, dealing with the reality of health outcomes for African Americans. And this story's happened and sort of collided. And so for the folks who don't know, what exactly is a stroke?
That's a great question. I think a perfect question, because so many people listening, you know, we have no idea what a stroke is. So basically, a stroke is like a heart attack, but of the brain. the brain doesn't get adequate blood flow. And lots of things can cause a stroke. Often it's a blockage of an artery going to the brain. And because the arteries to the brain are so small, these blockages can come from multiple sources.
And in fact, the initial reporting was that John Singleton had returned from a trip, was complaining about problem with his leg, and checked himself into the hospital.
Right. Yeah. So we have seen cases. I'm not speaking to this particular case, but we've seen cases where you could have a blood clot in your leg. For example, they can travel to your heart. And because of a small hole that some people will have in their heart, about 25% of people have a little small hole between the upper chambers of their heart, that clot could actually travel to the brain and cause a stroke. Not saying, again, that that's what happened here. I don't have access to that kind of information. But that's something we see sometimes. High blood pressure, hypertension is a real cause for stroke.
In fact, there was a woman who, at my church in Houston, she actually had a spike in her blood pressure that caused her stroke. Her blood, she was normal, but something happened when all of a sudden it just shot up. And she spent several years in a wheelchair recovering from that. Did not have health issues before that, but then it just happened.
That's right. And the problem with stroke is, the price you pay for your stroke can be very high. They can be fatal. We see people who die of their stroke, as witnessed here, complications of a stroke, Mr. Singleton.
How do we avert? You talked about hypertension, high blood pressure.
Right.
What else can be done for us where we are not in that situation to actually have a stroke?
So lifestyle modification the best we can in 2019. Avoiding tobacco. Cutting out the tobacco. Watching that diet, low salt, low fat, low fried foods. Greensboro, North Carolina is in the stroke belt. And when you look at obesity and you look at some of the other things that occur, they track along right aside of stroke. And so a healthy lifestyle goes a long ways. And
so one of the things that folks all should be doing is obviously what you just mentioned, but also constantly, I always say you should know your number. You should constantly get your blood pressure checked.
That's right.
I was at a church in Dallas, and we had a nurses ministry, and they offered free blood pressure checks after church on Sunday. And now these were the same nurses who worked at the Baylor College of Medicine.
Right.
And I'm going, guys, it's free.
That's right.
And I'm going, if you get sick, this is what you're going to do.
That's right.
You're going to have to see the same nurses.
That's right.
And the number of people who literally would not stop just for those 2 minutes. And then one day, so I'm out there haranguing people to, come get it done.
Right.
And the nurses ministry loved me doing it. And that was an African-American woman. She had 2 kids. And one of the young kids, it took his blood pressure. She says, you need to go to the hospital. She says, I'll go to the doctor tomorrow. She says, no. You need to go now.
Right.
Her child had his bloodshot eyes, and the child's blood pressure was sky high.
Right.
They said, no, you need to go now.
Right.
Had they not caught it then, it could have been devastating for that child.
That's right.
But again, for so many people, they wouldn't do it. It's free.
Right. That's right. And going out to the public, I think, is important. American Heart Association recognizes that. You're starting to see barbershops now where you can have your blood pressure checked when you get your hair cut. Because people aren't always going to just come into my clinic and say, hey, I don't think I have any health issues, but let's check my blood pressure and see.
Right. I get mine checked. Look, I was in line at a bank.
Right.
And they have free blood pressure. I'm like, first of all, it's free.
That's right.
And so I'm always getting mine checked, because when I've had sinus infection, and when all of a sudden I got it checked, and if it was 140, I would go, hold up, that's high.
Right.
Because I knew what my number had consistently been.
That's right.
And it's just for so many people, it's just the hardest thing in the world to get somebody to say, guys, just know your blood pressure number.
That's right.
And that way you're constantly getting it checked. If you hear it's 135 or 140, you go, wait a minute, hold up. I'm normally 110 or 115.
That's right. Exactly right. And so, you go to a pharmacy, you go to Walmart, you go to these kind of places, often, YMCA, you can put your arm in there, you get that blood pressure checked, and that's key. That's really important. I think something that's really crucial, too, is to know the signs and symptoms of a stroke.
And what are they?
So that you can help your family member. If that person, all of a sudden, they just can't comprehend what you're saying.
Yep.
They can't speak. They're trying, but the words just aren't coming out.
That happened to one of my aunts at my birthday party. Yep.
Right. Sometimes you'll see a facial droop. All of a sudden, Auntie's left face is drooping all of a sudden, and she doesn't even know. Bring it to her attention. Go look in the mirror with her. Sometimes we can't move one side of our body, or we can't feel one side of our body. We have numbness. Our vision is blurred, or all of a sudden we have kind of tunnel vision, you know, or we can only see out of one eye, or, you know, I don't even recognize someone's to the left of me anymore, you know.
What is a mini stroke? Because I've heard that from some doctors, if some people have mini strokes.
Right. So, you know, there are lots of terms that we throw around in medicine. So a stroke, by definition, means that some of the brain cells have died because they didn't get adequate blood flow. Mm-hmm. We would all agree a massive stroke, you know, is one where we have profound deficits. Our body, we can't move our left side. We're, like you described with your friend, they're in a wheelchair, and it takes years to get over. That's a massive stroke. A mini stroke means it, you know, was a small stroke, maybe to a smaller territory of the brain, or that it just resolved quickly, and we didn't have the deficits or the long-term paralysis or weakness or numbness. We often also describe what are called TIAs, transient ischemic attacks. And what that means is basically you had symptoms, they were real, they were legit, they resolved on their own, typically within about 24 hours. And when later we go back and we do an MRI or head CT, we don't see any evidence of it. It's completely resolved. We call that a transient ischemic attack.
All right. Dr. Allred, we certainly appreciate it. We have to chat with you under these circumstances, but it's, I mean, with the passing of John Singleton to a stroke, and it's certainly what we're doing here with the American Heart Association, this initiative they're doing to get better health outcomes for African Americans, partnering with HBCUs, is certainly is timely and important.
And thanks for being here and supporting the event and helping to get the word out. We appreciate that.
All right. Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, folks. Again, John Singleton, 51 years old. He had 5 children. Was a graduate of the USC film school there, and so it is just really sad, a really sad story. John was a really great guy, somebody who was, again, so supportive, loving of so many other people as well. I mentioned 2017 interviewing him at the American Black Film Festival, and so there were actually a couple of interviews that I did, one on stage, another was an interview that I did with him that we did off stage. That was a part of my TV One show, News One Now. He was launching, he debuted his show, Snowfall, which was airs on FX Network there at ABFF in 2017. And here was my conversation with the great John Singleton.
It's nice to just really, see different visions of what African-American filmmakers are wanting to do and aspiring to do, and also the talent. There's a talent pool. Talent pool comes all the way over there. There's people here that aren't necessarily going to go and move to LA to make it in the business. They come here for a few days, and we are supposed to be of service to them, to give them advice or whatever. So I don't mind, I come down and I just hold court sometimes, just talk to scores of folks and everything. That's what it's about.
Also relationships, in terms of being able to, there's nothing like when you meet people and you're having just regular, ordinary conversation, and you're building a rapport. Exactly.
And that's what any type of movement needs is support from different levels. It's not really about that whole thing I got mine and I'm not trying to let nobody else in. We need as many people as possible to realize their dreams and tell their stories, to really have even more of a stronger hold on what this is, because this media is so powerful. Film and television is so powerful. It has the ability to shape and form the way people think about themselves, first of all individually and then collectively. So we need people who are coming into this with a certain kind of mindset of what they want to do, but they understand, they can follow my example or someone else's example that they really admire and say, hey, listen, this person is a person of integrity. They have a certain clarity of vision, and if I follow that, maybe I'll make it.
John Maxwell has tons of leadership books. He hosts his conferences, and there are a lot of people who worked under him who he has said, it's time for you to go. And they've gone out and done their own thing. He's given their blessings, and they're still accrediting him for that.
Yes.
When you look at your career, how does it make you feel when you're able to say, they got their first shot on one of my projects?
I don't even look at it like that. I just look at it, I don't even go back to any of that stuff. It's just like, I was inspired by people. I was inspired by several filmmakers, Gordon Parks, and then Spike Lee, who I met just when I was in high school going to college, and I hope that I was able to service that for other people, for other filmmakers to do good work and stuff. You know what I mean?
What I mean by that is not being inspired, but giving somebody the shot. Yeah. A lot of people say, if I could just get a shot. But for you being in position to give somebody that shot, and then you see them, and then you see them years later.
I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. I love it. You know, I love it. I mean, you know, my good friend Ice Cube, you know, he started off with me as an actor, and then he became a writer, producer. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Now, writer, producer, entrepreneur,
yeah.
owning the whole company.
Exactly.
Thing.
You know, I love it. I love it.
Directing is one thing. Folks got to know you through directing Boys in the Hood. But one of the things that I've noticed and what you've done is you said, okay, that's one piece. But the ability to be able either to be an executive producer or producer to be involved in other aspects of the business.
Yes, exactly. Well,
how critical is that?
It's very critical. For me, you know, I write first and foremost because writing is the blueprint for everything. I write, direct, and produce. So I just really think that if you really want to have an all-encompassing vision of what you want to do, you have to really start at the root of story. You know what I mean? Story, and a story has to have a reason to be told. You know, whether or not it's a personal issue or it's something that is affecting a lot of people, whatever, it has to come from a genuine place of passion. And I always come from, that's all with me. It's all about a genuine place of passion.
So what you working on now?
I have a new show coming out called Snowfall. It's on FX Networks. It premieres July the 5th. And it's a story about how cocaine changed America, but changed LA first and foremost.
Frankie!
Franklin Saint, king of all the white boys.
I'm here to buy. I don't sell coke to kids. What do you sell? I sell kilos to people with money.
50 kilos worth of cocaine hidden in a hot tub?
I'm a soldier, not a drug dealer. So what are we talking about?
How badly does the director want this war funded?
Is it based on any real person or
no, it's all fictional,
a collection?
It's all fictional. It's a personal story for me because I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, as everybody knows, and see my movies. But this is about how the proliferation facilitated by the CIA of cheap cocaine went to Los Angeles.
Thank you, Gary Webb, the late Gary Webb.
And how that started the crack epidemic. So, you know, this is before cocaine. The show starts before cocaine, and the snowfall is the storm, you know. There's a storm coming. I've been telling people there's a storm coming, and it's cocaine, you know. And with the cheap cocaine, you know, they were able to basically, people were able to formulate and make crack. You know what I mean? They put it on us, but it was something that was, you know, it wasn't invented by us at all.
Folks, it has been a stunning last 24 hours as folks all across the country and the world have been sharing the remembrances of famed director John Singleton. This is an Instagram post made just a few moments ago by comedian Chris Spencer. It says, "I've known this cat since we were 11 years old, so this one hurts. R.I.P. John." As I said, folks all across the spectrum, whether you're talking about people on air and off, longtime friends and colleagues of John Singleton have been sharing their thoughts. Of course, yesterday, he died at the age of 51 after suffering a massive stroke just a couple of weeks ago. Among the folks who have been sharing their thoughts is director Jordan Peele. This is what he had to say about John Singleton. Guys, pull that up, please. R.I.P. John Singleton. So sad to hear. John was a brave artist and a true inspiration. His vision changed everything. Jada Pinkett Smith had this to say about him. She said, go right to it, guys. All right. Okay, it's freezing for some reason. Martin Lawrence said, "My heart and prayers go out to the amazing filmmaker, father, and human being, John Singleton. His legacy that has been filled with so much positivity and creativity will surely stand the test of time. R.I.P. brother." Again, all kind of folks. And I told you yesterday, Tyrese had a very emotional post with regards to John Singleton. Taraji Henson, she also posted something as well, a number of images. Let's go right to my iPad, Henry. This is what Taraji Henson posted. "My heart is broken. I'm at a loss for words. Can't stop crying. I will miss you, my dear friend John Singleton. You gave me my first big break in Baby Boy and again in Hustle and Flow. You believed in me when Hollywood did not get me at all. Throughout my career, when I needed advice, it was you I called and you answered each and every time with sound advice. You noticed my funny and comedic timing long before Hollywood caught on, and you named me Lucy after Lucille Ball. My God. Up next for us was the Emmett Till story, I Am Just Broken. God bless you, your mom and your beautiful babies and family. Praying for all of our strength as we try and move on without you. My God, my God. John Singleton. Regina King, of course, who won an Oscar this year for If Beale Street Could Talk. Her first film was in Boys in the Hood. This is what she had to say about John Singleton. Pull it up, please. We have it. All right, folks. And so Regina King, again, as I said, won the Oscar this year. And one of the things that she also, this is what she said: rest in power, my friend, one of the greatest to ever do it. Thank you, God, for blessing us with this gift, better known as John Singleton. Having trouble finding enough words to share just what you mean to me. Will always love you, John. Your spirit will forever shine bright. One of the things that also jumps out is that Kelly Carter, the undefeated, hopefully we'll try to get her on this week. She wrote a piece today that was pretty interesting. She said for the last 12 years, she would leave her seat at the Oscars and she would always go to a nearby bar, and the person who would always be sitting at the end of that bar was John Singleton. And this year, she talked about how it pretty much was a year where many of the people John Singleton actually put in movies behind the camera, in front of the camera, won Oscars. Regina King was one of those folks. Also, Pete Ramsey for Spider-Man worked on John Singleton's film as well. It was sort of, and she said to him, she said that them winning, John, also meant you winning. And so, again, so many people are still shocked and stunned that he is dead at the age of 51. Now, one of the movies that caught his attention early on was the movie Cooley High. It is considered a black cult classic. If you black and have not seen Cooley High, trust me, your black card should be revoked. And he saw that film, and one day he saw his mom crying watching the movie. He said, "Mom, why are you crying?" And she said, "Because of this film." And he said, "That's what I want to do. Make the kind of art that can move someone emotionally." Well, the person who directed Cooley High is the famed director Michael Schultz. He joins us right now. Michael, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered, brother.
Hey, it's good to be here. Too bad it's such a sad occasion.
It has to mean something to you that Cooley High, which, of course, those of us who love it, but for a guy like John Singleton, watching that film, one of the films that sparked his imagination, which led to him going to film school, finishing at 22, starting on Boys in the Hood at 23, and being the first, the youngest, and the first African-American nominated for a Best Director for an Oscar, has to feel special for you.
Well, his whole career felt special to me. Back in 1990 or 91, I forget the exact year, he was in his senior year at USC, and they invited me to screen Cooley High there and then do a Q&A afterwards. And after the Q&A, this young black guy runs up to me and he says, "Hey, my name is John Singleton, and I'm going to make my own Cooley High." and I said, "That's great, brother. All power to you." And then a year later, I see Columbia Pictures producing John Singleton's Cooley High. I was so proud, He told me that how the film affected him, but I never heard that story about him sitting with his mother. And that he was 7 years old at the time. And what it told me, his response and many other young people's response, black and believe it white, that film affected them so much that I realized what I had known all the time, that people kept telling us, no, what the images that you see on film don't really affect people, don't really matter. For us, they matter incredibly. And being able to affect the way people think about who we are, to be, and John did that. He did that his whole career. And I've always been very, very fond of him and proud of him.
Well, one of the things that, and it was amazing as I was reading so many stories, he only did 8 films.
Right.
I mean,
you don't have to do a lot.
I mean, he produced a number of other films. He did television as well. And I guess I sort of, what came to mind is Ralph Ellison. And you think about Ralph Ellison, the number of books that he did in his career.
Right.
2. You know, and so and so that is still just astonishing, the impact that he had. 8 movies.
Exactly. It's not about quantity. It's about quality, and it's about what the story that you are telling people. And when you touch on that nerve, it's never forgotten.
When you look at some of these tributes, when you look at the individuals who he put in movies first, you think about, again, Boys in the Hood, Morris Chestnut, first movie, Ice Cube, first movie. You had, of course, Regina King, first movie, Nia Long in the movie. When you think about the folk, Cuba Gooding Jr. as well as, Angela Bassett, a lot of people, first time in major roles and leads, and you think about, and so you go down the line, I mean, and here's somebody who was 23.
Right.
And it was what was a crazy story. He literally said that he was figuring out how to direct as the movie was going on, and by he got to really like the third part of the whole process, he said, then I started taking some chances. I mean, this is his first film.
Right. And Lawrence Fishburne was a big help to him. I knew Lawrence from years ago back in the theater, and he was telling me during the process of filming, he said, got this brilliant young filmmaker, but he needs a lot of help, but he's doing a great job.
And then, of course, it comes out, and then he gets nominated for an Oscar, and he's 24 years old, and folks are going, what in the world is going on? A lot from 24 to 51, and him passing away.
Yeah.
What
amazing. And he had, what kills me is that he had so much more to offer. So I hate seeing a life like that cut short. But the brother left us a legacy that is critically important, and I hope all the folks out there, if they haven't seen all of his films, go through and do their own film class and watch them from 1 to 8.
The photos we're seeing right now, folks, these are images that from my photo archives. The one with David Oyelowo took place at Oprah's home when they screened Selma. This is, of course, the photo from American Black Film Festival. This is the image that Mario Van Peebles sent us. We had him on the show on yesterday. This image here is when I interviewed John Singleton at the American Black Film Festival in 2017. And this is a shot here of Ava DuVernay that I shot at both of them and sent to her. And what's interesting, Michael, so we were at Oprah's house, and this was after the brunch that Sunday, and we're taking photos, and so John had this camera, and I think I forgot the name of the brand, and so we're sitting here taking these different photos, and he was so intense just getting the right photo, and he was like, "No, I'm gonna take it with my camera." I was like, "John, get in a damn photo." And so, like, we literally had to almost strangle him to have him give up the camera just to get in the photo. He was taken with David Oyelowo, Ava DuVernay, and others, and it was just so hilarious though. And so we had this conversation about cameras and just photos and different images, and I forgot who was saying next to us. They were sort of looking at us going, like, the two of y'all literally sitting here having this really deep conversation about cameras And I try to explain to the person that, look, I mean, this is what you do. I mean, you are enamored with the craft, and so whether or not it's a video camera or a still camera, I mean, you always want the quality shot.
Exactly, and always finding the next best piece of equipment to tell your story. You know. Yeah.
Thank God it's all a tax write-off. With all of the gear that I have, you're absolutely right. When you think about the conversation the two of you had, what stands out?
I just wanted to show this picture with John and Sidney Poitier.
Wow.
And me, it may be a little blown out.
No. We see it.
Yeah. At the Directors Guild, we were doing a tribute to Sidney. So I'm looking forward to doing a tribute to John at the DGA. Your question was, what stands out?
In terms of conversations the two of you had.
You know, we were always talking film. And what always stood out to me with John was his kind of relentless desire to show the people that he grew up with, the people that he knew, to really put that picture up to the world so that there would be a understanding of who he was, of who they were, of who we are, you know? That's basically it. And the fun, that he always had a twinkle in his eye, like he was up to something.
Very true. Very true. Very true. If the folks in the control room, if y'all can get that 13-second clip of when we were at ABFF, it was so funny because also he tried to come off as he was hard. But you're right, because we had this clip where we finished the Q&A and we're taking photos and so all the photos are the same. We're just standing there smiling. So I was like, okay, now it's time for a fun photo. And so then I sort of did this really fun expression, and John just sort of stood there. And I'm like, damn it, John, have a fun pose. He's like, okay, I'm gonna do a fun pose. And it was a scowl. I'm like, that's the best you can do. So y'all go ahead and roll that video. Tasha Whitten-Griggs, TV One publicist, she sent me this yesterday. So y'all roll this. We're gonna do a fun one. That's your phone, John. God damn it, come on with the phone.
You do that, and I'll be like,
yeah.
So it's like so he always tried to have this hard look, but it was a little sly smile on his face.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's who he was. Well, Michael Schultz, first of all, we greatly appreciate all of your work. In fact, Tiffany Lofton, who is the NAACP Youth and College Division Director, probably a couple of years ago, we were, I was watching Car Wash and we were texting, and she had the audacity to say that she had, now Tiffany just turned 30, and she said she had never seen Car Wash, and I literally cussed her out. And I told her she would never be allowed to be on my show again unless she watched Car Wash. And so she literally came over with some friends that night to my house to watch Car Wash. And so I have a standard. My niece will tell you, everybody, if you do not watch Cooley High or Car Wash, you cannot be on my show. You can't be in my house if you black, because your black card will be revoked. Those two are on the list. 2 movies you directed.
Well, thank you. Thank you for educating people.
Well, Michael, we appreciate your work, man, all that you've done, and I look forward to getting back out to L.A. and you and I sitting down to have a great one-on-one conversation for our unfiltered audience. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Take care.
All right. Thanks a bunch. Folks, we talk about, of course, filmmaking, but many folks did not realize that John also was about public policy. Congresswoman Karen Bass tweeted this video out, was when John Singleton appeared before Congress the year after Boys in the Hood came out, talking about the impact of public policy on the lives of young African Americans.
Some boys and girls may choose sports, reading, or an artistic endeavor. For children in most inner cities, there is no such rite of passage that is clearly defined. And it's more difficult for a young American citizen to get a high school diploma than to get a gun. So with that, we really can't focus on the aftermath of the problem, our children living under violence, until we start to dissect the causes of this disease, and that lies in the quality of life in our youth. It's my belief that the prime factors that motivate children to drop out of school, steal, sell drugs, and possibly murder each other is the quality of their lives. Now, we could all say all the responsibility of the lives of these children lies solely with their parents. This is not wholly truth. All children growing up in this country should have the same rights when it comes to growing up into a responsible citizen. When the quality of their lives are made dysfunctional, the people are made inept. When the people are unable to take action against their frustrations, then the society in which they live becomes dysfunctional. If a child loses hope and doesn't believe he or she can affect the quality of life around them, then it makes it easier for them to disrespect themselves or their peers and the community in which they live. Whereas the actions of these children are in reaction to their quality of life, the inaction of federal and state governments towards any positive change is by far a more violent act. Why does more federal and state funding go towards prisons than education? Isn't it common sense to understand that we can't put everybody in jail, and that it would be more positive if we work towards raising a population of citizens to be assets to this country instead of dependents? America right now is a dysfunctional family, and its children in some places in this country are only acting out the dysfunction of their elders. By investing in our children, we reap the fruit of what we once were and what we can be as a country. If the federal government does not start working towards a positive future for our children, then imagine what damage the next 10, 15, 20 years hold for our country. If we raise a population of indifferent youth, you can expect far more incidents like the LA riots that will not be exclusive to larger American cities. This would be the ultimate violent act, and we would only have ourselves to blame and not our children. Peace.
All right, folks, let's bring in our panel. Malik Abdul, Vice President, Black Conservative Federation. Kelly Bethea, Communications Strategist. Also joining us, Alicia Garza, co-founder, Black Lives Matter, and Mustafa Santiago Ali, former Senior Advisor for the Environmental Justice at the EPA via Skype. I want to start with you, Alicia. The reason we're doing this today, and we're going to do it again tomorrow, and then Thursday and Friday, is because I've always had an issue when great African Americans pass, and it's essentially ignored by mainstream. His obit, obviously, LA Times, New York Times, all these different places like this here. But I also think it's different for African Americans for us to properly pay tribute and unpack the life of someone great. And when you think about film, when you think about what John Singleton, what he put on the screen, I think about Frederick Douglass, how he was very deliberate with taking photos, because he wanted, for the purpose of history, for people to know how black people looked in the 1800s. And then if you compare the portraits of Frederick Douglass, looking very astute in his clothing, to whites of the time as well, people have to understand the power of images and why us framing it is critically important. And that's what John Singleton did.
Mm-hmm. So the question is...
Speak to that issue.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, first of all, John Singleton was incredible, and his loss is devastating, not just to black communities, but I think to art and culture and film. John Singleton was one of the first to really portray conditions in black communities across America. He was one of the first to demonstrate the process of gentrification, right? I mean, a lot of how I learned about what gentrification was through watching John Singleton movies, where he's bringing social, economic, and cultural issues to the forefront and, in a lot of ways, into the mainstream. And it is true that black artists and black influencers, and not influencers on Twitter, I mean like people who are shaping our society, are not only not lionized while they're alive, but they're also not lionized when they die. And we do have an opportunity to change that. I think we are in a moment where it is important not just to lift up whatever controversies may have surrounded his art, but also to lift up the ways in which he really advanced not only the careers but the art of a number of black artists that have literally changed the entertainment industry.
And Kelly, that's why I think if you say only doing 8 films, and obviously doing television and producing other films, but it was the folks who he was able to bring in. When you talk about Spike Lee as well, I always make the point when I look at cable news, when I look at the folks who are black and I'm seeing them on MSNBC and CNN, and I'm going, but I also know when I put them on television first, that was deliberate. Because a lot of people don't understand that you can actually impact broader society just elevating people in your space, where you're not necessarily you don't have to be the CEO of a network, but in your space, if you use your space to elevate others, then you can actually change society. And I think when you look at the roll call of people who he put in movies first, and how they've been able to just branch and go on and on and on, and then also replicate what he did, that's how I think you utilize your power. So although he dies at 51, the impact goes far beyond him passing away in 2019.
No, absolutely. Not only did he impact those people who he brought in, he paved the way for people who didn't even know him personally until they were in the space of John Singleton, such as Jordan Peele and Ava DuVernay and other black directors, producers, what have you. The loss is great. The movie that impacted me the most, while a lot of people are talking about, yes, Poetic Justice, Boys in the Hood, the like, my movie is Rosewood, because not only with Boys in the Hood and Poetic Justice, Higher Learning, we saw what black people are like in the era that we were in.
Right.
And then Rosewood taught us that history was really just repeating itself, right? In terms of our status in society, how we had to navigate things, but also the fact that our people were still excellent in that era. And I had never seen a movie in that context before Rosewood. So for me, that's my movie. That's what my impact was.
Mustafa, when you think about what is mine, the reality is when he sent his script for Boys in the Hood, when they said, let's do this, he was adamant, I will direct it. And, okay, think about it. He's 22 years old, just out of film school, major studio, and he says from the get-go, no one else is going to direct this. I am going to direct it. That is important when you talk about owning your voice and controlling the narrative.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think it shows that he had a very early understanding about power and how to make sure that you are pulling all the pieces together, that you are framing out the narrative, that you are telling the narrative, and that you are retaining the rights that are so necessary to make sure that we don't lose control of our stories. When I think about people like Melvin Van Peebles, when I think about Gordon Parks, I put John in that same category because they're telling our stories and they're telling them in an authentic way, but they're also making sure that there's power in that process. And I think that that's so important, and so many people miss that.
Malik?
I actually listened to a lot of the conversation that people have been having about him. I will say my movies. I'm a huge fan of Poetic Justice, in part because Tupac is in that movie, and it's actually I don't know if that's the only movie that he's ever been in. But
no, he's been in other several.
Yeah, but that was one of the ones that I always remember. And Kelly, you actually got my Rosewood one because my mother and I were talking about this, and that's one of the movies that we think about because it's one of those, there are a lot. For me, it was similar to what School Days was. When I watch things like Higher Learning, Poetic Justice, because it's talking about specific issues at that time, ironically, that we're still dealing with today. So, I applaud his legacy and hope that we, in platforms like this, that we're able to use these platforms to really honor our people when they're here, not just when they're gone. So.
Well, when I interviewed him in 2017 at ABFF, we talked about Baby Boy, and he got a huge laugh because I hated Baby Boy. Literally, I saw Baby Boy, and I wanted to whoop Jody's ass.
I didn't like it.
You don't understand. I can't stand sorry ass men.
I don't like Baby Boy.
I can't.
I'm glad you said it.
No. John hollered. He said, no. You were supposed to hate Jody. And so we had this huge, I mean, he cracked up laughing when I said, dude, you don't understand. I could not watch Baby Boy for 5 years after it came out. I saw it and was pissed. I was like, John, you don't understand. And so I said, then, when I watched it again, I said, so now, I said, for me now, I said, Baby Boy went from a drama to a comedy. and he hollered. He hollered. I just said, look, I said, dude, I wanted to whoop. I was like whoop his ass like Ving Rhames because I can't stand a sorry man. And so we're going to continue our tribute to John Singleton. Folks, we have been talking all week about the death on Monday of John Singleton, passed away at the age of 51. His family has also been encouraging black men to get tested for blood pressure because John suffered from hypertension for a number of years. Many people have talked about his impact on Hollywood, the number of people who he put in films their first shot, folks who also had never produced before, never directed before, folks who had never done all kinds of different jobs. But even John Singleton needed somebody who believed in him. So when he wrote Boys in the Hood, he submitted it to a number of different people. And my next guest is someone who actually read that script. Stephanie Elaine joins us right now. She has known John Singleton for his entire career. Stephanie, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'm reading so many different stories about John, his work, and then so I came across the story where you were the one who was reading scripts for one of the studios, and you came across this thing called Boys in the Hood.
Yeah, it's something like that. I was actually in the story department. I had just been promoted, and I was looking to replace myself in the story department with a person of color. And John, I'd already actually read one of John's scripts, which we need to make now. It's called Twilight Time. It's an all-female starring script. And he was talented, but I heard he needed a job. And so I was interviewing him to take a reader job.
Wow.
But he only wanted to talk about one thing, and that was his latest script called Boys in the Hood.
So you're interviewing him for a job to read scripts, and he's telling you, no. I got a script. I need you to read.
Exactly. But it was even worse than that because he said, you can't read it because I'm going to direct it, and I know how studios do you. And so basically, I had to chase him for 2 weeks to get the script.
Whoa. Stop. Hold up.
Yeah.
Hold up. You trying to hire him to be a script reader for the studio. You got this 22-year-old kid out of film school, never directed, telling you how this is going to go down, and you got to chase him?
That's exactly right.
Okay, I know at one point you said, I don't know who this arrogant Kappa think he is. Yeah, I gotta go. Well, man, I got my Alpha shirt on, so I had to go ahead and do that. But no, so what are you thinking? Like, why am I chasing him down?
Because I'll tell you why. Because as soon as he started to talk about this story, I was enthralled. I knew that it must have been good because he felt it, he lived it, he was so excited about it, he could see it. And so basically I did track it down. It took me 2 weeks. I got it. I sat in my little tiny nook and I read it, and I was just streaming in tears. I went to school in Inglewood. I knew those kids, and I was like, wow. This is the whole reason why I'm here, to get this movie made. And I just made it my business to do like whatever I could to make it happen. But it was going to happen anyway because John was John, and he just was going to. I was lucky basically to be in a spot where I could help.
So the studio says, yes, we'll go ahead and do it. And then John Singleton says, oh, by the way, I am directing this.
No, he didn't bait and switch. He said, here's the script, and I am going to direct it. And then I think in the room, Frank said, well, what if I paid you $100,000 or $200,000, you know, just for the script? And he was like, you could keep your money. He didn't care. He knew that was his destiny in a crazy, beautiful, lovely way. He knew that was his destiny. And it was infectious. Like, so he sat at the table, everybody said yes. And then in 2 months, we went off and started making it.
Were you telling yourself, I ain't never seen a young black man roll into a Hollywood studio like this?
Never. But, you know, and it was different because Spike was making his own movies. You know, he was raising his own money and making his own movies. So, and John was so enamored with Spike. He loved Spike. Spike was like his idol and really somebody who made him feel like I have to do the West Coast answer, like what's happening out here, you know? And yeah.
We were talking the other day, I was talking to Michael Schultz, and I said to Michael Schultz that he only made 8 films. And Schultz said, it's not about number. He said, it's 8 quality films.
It's 8 quality films. It's the TV shows. But you know what? It's even more. And since his passing, I have been blown away by how many people felt that he was there for them, that he read their scripts. He gave them notes. He tutored them. He let them shadow him on set. I truly believe Boys in the Hood is an incredible legacy in all of the work that he did. But an even bigger legacy, I think, is how many people he inspired and how much time he gave as a creative godfather to a couple generations of black filmmakers.
Last time you saw him? Last time you talked to him?
A couple weeks ago, we were, we were chatting about some business we had, you know, it was almost time to get back on that boat because I'd been on the boat a couple times. He was an amazing sailor, but I started sailing with him at the very beginning. So I do have a crazy story where, you know, we almost went under on the boat, but he stuck with it just like he did with everything, and he became a master sailor. And I just picture him on that boat.
My panel has some questions. I'm gonna start first with Joseph.
Hi, Stephanie. Nice to meet you. It just sounds wonderful. This is quite an incredible story. Can you talk a bit more about his legacy? I mean, I know that he basically was a phenomenon, but a lot of people don't know or haven't talked about the fact that he nurtured and mentored some other people behind him, and that he probably is going to open the door for so many other people. Are there people in the pipeline who you think we might think about or keep an eye on? And also sailing, really? John Singleton from South Central? That's fascinating.
For years, he's had a beautiful sailboat in the marina, and he goes out on it every day. He goes out and he invites people out, and we sail up and down, and he points out the land and the whales, and it's pretty amazing. It's beautiful out there. John helped so many people. You know, just from that first amazing entity called Boys in the Hood. Every single actor on there. But it's, like I said, it's more than that, because then the next time he did it again. Next time it was Janet, who had never had a feature role, Janet Jackson, and Tupac. You know, he managed to, and then Maya Angelou, you know, was in Poetic Justice. That was amazing. We shot that right after the uprising in '94. God, it just goes on. You know, and Craig Brewer is a perfect example, because when I read Hustle and Flow, I fell in love with this voice. I had been trying to shop it, trying to find somebody. I gave it to John, and it took him a couple months, but then he read it and coming back, and he was like, this is so dope. We're going to make this movie. We shopped it again. And then when nobody wanted to do it, he was like, I'm writing the check, you know, and Craig Brewer is very much a product of John's mentorship and benefactorship, and yeah, we made 2 movies together with him. But it's not even that. Like, the younger people, the people who are in their 20s, Lena Waithe and that whole crowd, like he's mentored so many people. I don't even know how he could do it, because he works too.
Erica.
Great to be able to speak with you. My question is, with John Singleton, you worked with him on several projects. So what was the most impactful project that you worked on John Singleton with, and then why was that the most impactful project?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I would have to say Boys, and it was because it was my first movie ever. It was his first movie. Neither of us, we were faking it. We were just faking it till we made it. And together, because I was the representative at the studio, I literally just been there a few months from the story department. They had to promote me to vice president just to oversee the movie, which I had no idea what that meant. I brought in a producer friend, Steve Nicolaitis, who basically taught us both like how to make a movie. And you know, I fought with John. John was fierce in his vision, and he really taught me how to protect the artist's vision. And he was right. You know, arguments that I had with him, he was absolutely right. And so I really learned how to produce artists, how to produce auteurs. And you know, 9 months later, we were on the carpet at Cannes, and it did change the world, that movie. So that was my first movie. That was John's first movie. Nothing's really topped it, except for, I would say, you know, kneeling at the feet of Maya Angelou on set, or Hustle and Flow, which everybody in town turned down, and then we sold it for a whole lot of money at Sundance to all the very same people who, you know, had turned it down. So that was a big celebratory community movie that we all chipped in and did what we could. But there's so many memories. I mean, it's hard to. You know, my son is an actor, and he starred in Snowfall. And so at the very end of 2 in the morning, I get this text, and it's John Singleton and my son, Wade Elaine Marcus, hugging and grinning, and they're on set, and John was directing Wade in an episode of Snowfall. And that was, of course, a huge full circle moment.
Greg Carr.
Stephanie, my sympathies, and it's really wonderful to hear these stories. You know, I'm thinking about how much has changed and how much hasn't changed. And for you to be sitting at Columbia, just new there, and be able to push this through, how is it still difficult for our artists to have those pathways to stand in their truths and tell their stories? I'm asking that because, of course, he was influenced by Spike and Robert Townsend and others, but I'm thinking about another set of L.A. creative artists coming out of UCLA, the so-called L.A. Rebellion. You know, Haile Garima, Charles Burdett, one of the great directors, of course, Julie Dash and others. That nexus between independent filmmakers who say, I'm going to make this the way I want it, and industry filmmakers, people like you, who enabled John Singleton, who shows up out of USC, but also with an agent. In other words, he's kind of an anomaly. You know, how important is it for people like you to sit at that crossroads so that our young people don't have to compromise their vision, and so that these great filmmakers like Dash and Garima and Burdett, who've made this incredible body of work, could perhaps even be in the industry while preserving their independent insurrectionist mindset?
It's a really great question, and I have two answers for you. One, the gatekeepers have got to be diverse. They have got to reflect the constituency. You cannot have, you know, and it hasn't changed that much. When I was a studio executive, there was one other person of color, you know, in that division at the table, but it hasn't really changed that much. But what has changed are the opportunities, because the streamers. We made 2 movies in the last couple of years at Netflix. One is Juanita. If you haven't seen it, please see it. Alfre Woodard has never been #1 on the call sheet until Juanita. It is a quirky, lovely, wonderful, wonderful movie. And Burning Sands, which was about, as you know, Roland, a black HBCU frat guys who are hazing each other really harshly. And those movies could not get made in the regular system,
right?
Right? And so we went to Netflix, which was at the time just sort of trying to figure out what they were doing. We had complete creative control. We could do whatever we want. And that's what's so exciting, because it's not just the big monopoly studios that have the control. There's so many other places to get money, independent money, streamer money, that allows the full voice. In the 90s, it was really gangster movies, comedies, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Now, there's so many authentic stories,
That's
and
right.
they're all being told. And that gives me so much hope, because I feel like it's not a fad, it's not a trend, but it's finally, we're in a place where we can express ourselves. But the critics, we need more women critics, we need more critics of color, and we need more gatekeepers, you know, at the studios, at the agencies, and at film festivals that really, really reflect America as we really are.
Last question, Stephanie, from me, and that is, John was always intense. He always had that hard look on his face, but he also loved to smile. You knew him well. What would John Singleton be saying about all the love and praise folks are showering on him in the wake of his passing?
You know, Roland, it's the thing I keep thinking about, because I've been so sad and just so senseless and this, but then I look around and I see, you know, President Obama sent out the most heartfelt tweet about him, and so across so many different areas, from academia to television to film. Like, he was so beloved, and I know that he would be so tickled to see everybody just expressing their love for him.
Well, one of the things I love about social media is that I was sitting here reading the story, and then I saw your name, and I go, okay, so I typed your name in the Twitter, and I'm like, whoa, she's following me on Twitter, and I'm following her. And
true.
so,
well, you were in one of my movies. Come on now, you were in.
That's true. That's true. Beyond the Lights, yes, indeed. But thank goodness I send you a direct message, and I'm like, let's talk about John. I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thanks for what you do. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Stephanie. Thanks a bunch, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye bye. Of course, all week we've been talking and giving props and attention to John Singleton, of course, the director who passed away on Monday at the age of 51, suffering a stroke a couple of weeks earlier. And one of the institutions that he has always supported has been the American Black Film Festival. Initially, it was the Acapulco Black Film Festival. But he always had a frequent presence there. I had a chance to, of course, sit down and interview John a couple of years ago from the main stage. A great conversation. We're trying to get that video because we would love to show you, because it was really a fascinating conversation about his thoughts on directing, on movies, and all the projects that he's working on. And my next guest, Jeff Friday, is the co-founder of the American Black Film Festival. He joins us right now. Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. What's up, Brother Roland?
Man, good to see you. It certainly had to be a shock to you, as to so many others, the death of John Singleton. But as I said, he was a huge supporter of ABFF.
You know, that's an understatement. You know, I don't know if Ivan told you the story, and you've been a huge supporter as well. But I know I had this silly idea after going to Sundance in 1997 about doing a Black Film Fest, and you know, no idea who would show up. And one of the first 5 people I called was John, and that we call it the original 5. It was Halle Berry, John Singleton, Spike Lee, Bill Duke, and Robert Townsend. And since 1997, John has probably attended maybe 16 of the 22 we've done already. And just what you said, I mean, he's done everything, man. We premiered Baby Boy. I actually met Taraji and Tyrese in Miami when we did Baby Boy. He brought his current show Snowfall. He sat for conversations. He's done master classes. He's met with kids. I mean, he's been probably one of the most important people in our history, man. And I miss him so much. And it's going to be so strange to not have him there, you know. I'm just very grateful that we've had John Singleton on this ride with ABFF.
Yesterday, Stephanie Elaine was on the show, and she talked about just a number of people who he mentored. Even though he only directed 8 movies, big screen movies, that you talk about television, executive producing, and that was also the key. The folks who've been able to go to ABFF, to be able to interact, to meet, to talk with, to bounce an idea off of, run something by you, that to me is also the value of an American Black Film Festival, because you can actually touch these individuals who you otherwise would never get a chance to even meet or talk to. And John did it.
I remember in 1997 we were talking about how we make the ABFF special and unlike, how we make it a Hollywood event that doesn't feel like a Hollywood event. And I always knew that if we can get Black stars and Black people in this business and film and TV, get them away from LA and put them in this community where they start to touch and feel and nurture. Because I have this belief, man, that, you know, Black people really do love each other. I know we don't treat each other so great all the time, and we're very self-critical, but at the core, we all kind of come from the same roots. We all sat around the same dinner table eating same soul food, you know, depending whether you're from Newark, New Jersey or Chicago. And I just think that we're more alike than we are different. And really the magic of our event is the fact that people like John and Spike Lee and Robert Townsend do connect. They do take time for young people. And the legacy is great, man. And like I said, John Singleton has never told me no. I cannot think of one time that I've asked him to do something, and we've been buddies for 25 years, that he's told me no. And John is as busy as anybody. John has always been working, right? So he's only directed 8 movies, but he's done a lot of other things in the EP world and producing, and he's never told me no. So the way I like to, what I've been doing interviews all week, and I tell people, because John's never told me no, he's never told our community no, and we all just owe him a great deal of gratitude, man.
When you talk about that connection and the people who he was able to bring in, ABFF provides that platform. When you look at the Maury Hardwicks, you look at Will Packer, you look at the people who are doing these amazing things. To have
Ryan Coogler,
absolutely.
Right.
I mean, to have a place where we can go and be us, where we can be vulnerable, where we can actually get advice. That to me is also what's great. And then to take that same attitude when you're not at ABFF, that to me is also, I think, the beauty and power of John Singleton, because that was who he was. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to do this thing only because I'm at this event. It's, look, I can't make a difference if it's all about me. He couldn't direct everything. He couldn't produce everything. But all of a sudden, if you look back now, and as we are, he dies at 51, but if you look at, again, the tentacles, you realize how huge of an influence he had way beyond just him.
Absolutely. You know what? Just watch. We're going to do a big tribute to him this year. Now, we haven't announced it publicly yet, so I guess you're the first to hear it. You're my brother, so I got to tell you first. But we're going to do a big thing. I will say, I won't get specific yet, but we're going to do a big. You will know by the time you leave Miami how much Brother John meant to us. And if you watch Boys in the Hood, and you look at those stars, look at how successful everybody in that movie is. You know, that's really, Taraji's one example, and Taraji and Tyrese. But if you ask, Ice Cube says that John Singleton convinced him that he could play some of the roles that he played. So John lived it, man. He was not about, you said about himself, he was about us. And everything that he did, and every person that he touched, is living proof that he was a community-minded person, and he knew that his legacy would be really judged based on everybody that he helped get to second base, and some have even hit home runs and grand slams now. So, we need more people in our industry like him. This is an industry of kind of self-centered people. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but it is what it is. And we're gonna miss John, man. And hopefully will take this moment to reflect on all the good that he did, and some of us will start behaving like John did and be more community-minded.
So I am, Henry, this is the last question here. I'm playing a video here just from my Instagram page. Henry, you can pull it up if you can. This was, of course, me. In 2017, we were having fun. It was after I did the interview with him on stage. We were taking photos backstage. I said, it's time for a fun photo. And then John stayed serious. I was like, damn, John, come on. I said, take a fun photo. Then, of course, he had this hard look. And what was interesting about that, again, people will come up to him and they would think, oh, man, he is an unapproachable brother. But he was funny as all get out. He loved to laugh, but that was just sort of that growing up where he did, that sort of a hard exterior. That was not who he was. He was serious, but he also was a fun-loving guy.
Yeah, he was serious about his business, right? But John grew up in South Central. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. So, we can't. But I cried movies, so we can pretend that we hardcore if we want to. But he's one of the sweetest guys you'll ever want to meet, And that video, I was standing there when you guys did that, which is why I was laughing. And I'm going to get you a clip from that interview you did, because that interview was that the same year you did the interview on stage with him?
Yeah, that was 2017.
That was magic, man. There was a couple of pieces of that video that we love your viewers to check out too. So we're going to get you a clip from that so you can share that with folks too. But kudos to you too, bro. And don't forget yourself, man. I know this is about John, but you've been a champion of everything that we've done, for many years now. I'm also very thankful to you. Every platform you've had, you've brought him there and you've covered us. It's really important, man, if we all kind of make this a community thing.
Well, I appreciate that. And in fact, the last thing here, I'm going to show this photo. I got an email, y'all, from a brother named Michael Wyatt. He was a photographer. He sent me an email. He saw the clip on ABFF the interview, and then when I posted that video, he said, "Roland, I was the photographer who shot the photo when you were joking with John," and he said, "I want you to have it." And he's sending me a framed copy, but he emailed it. So y'all just saw the video. This was the actual photo that we took. So I knew we couldn't finish the week without talking to you, Jeff, about John Singleton. We appreciate it. Again, he was a huge supporter of you and your wife, Nicole, and everybody at ABFF. And it will be a lot different when we're there in June in Miami and we don't get to see John Singleton, but he'll certainly be there in spirit.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Send me that photo, too. I love that. I'll put it up in my office.
I'll send it to you right now. All right, Jeff Ryder, thanks a lot. Hey, fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey, fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. Martin.